Hello, welcome to the 1 to 11 podcast. This is the podcast where myself, Paul, and my brother John
Hello.
are looking at creating a team but based on a theme. It's essentially our love letter to football. It's where we've had a look and, based on our experiences, pick a team where we feel meet a criteria. One of the things that we'd like to do with this is we'd like to get other people's opinions. So if you feel that there's an omission within here, we'd very much like people to get in touch. Now, how can they do that, John? How can they get in touch with us?
We're on Twitter at the 1 to 11 pod. We're on Facebook at the 1 to 11 podcast, and we are on Instagram at the 1 to 11 pod. Our email is also in the show notes.
Now, we've been doing a theme of the Premier League. It is 30 years of the Premier League this year.
Yeah.
And you'll have Alive and Kicking by Simply Minds in your head when you think of the early start of the Premier League. We try. One of the things that we've done is, obviously, naturally, you have a focus towards the teams that have been successful.
Yes.
What we wanted to do was move away from that in some ways, and we wanted to have a look at some cult heroes. Now, I've purposely kind of tried to leave it quite vague with cult hero. I think it doesn't have to be a set criteria, just people who were cult heroes for that club.
Yeah, I guess I thought at the time, people who've been at the clubs a long time, but I don't think that's technically what makes a cult hero. A cult hero is quite an indefinable thing, but I think basically it's what it is it's a connection with the crowd. Mainly, either that's because you might be a local lad who has risen through the ranks. You might be someone who's joined a team and you're maybe had a hard time with it elsewhere, coming in and absolutely tearing it apart for a couple of years, and then you move on. So there's a few players like that, but I've gone with a slightly strange formation here to fit in a lot of my players. So I've gone with effectively a 3-6-1. But yeah, it's probably a 3-3-3-1.
Can you tell who's a Bielsa fan on the podcast?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of width here.
So I've gone for a very centralised 4-4-2.
I mean, that's not a surprise, but yeah, it's also hard because I'm a Leeds United fan. You're a Man United fan. Man United technically aren't a team that lends itself to cult heroes. Maybe more than, but like Man City back in the day would have. But not now. Now they're a petro state. It's very hard for them to, if you're spending £60 million on a midfielder, like they've just paid 45 million quid for Phillips to sit on their bench. That doesn't lead to cult heroism, but there were certain clubs like you look at like Everton's, West Ham, Southampton, like what's for a long point of their chase, they're defending themselves from relegation, or they're sort of chasing mid-table stuff. I think that sort of lends themselves to cult heroism. But we'll go through it as we go, because basically we'll describe why they were a cult hero to us. So, not to us, but why there is a cult heroism to their story. So, let's both start in goal, because we've both got goalkeepers.
So I'm going to start with Michel Vorm at Swansea.
I didn't think of Michel Vorm, but you could, yeah. This isn't a long-standing cult heroism, but he was during their Premier League years.
Then winning the League Cup.
Yeah. He was
the Laudrup years.
Yeah, as well. You can tell generally the first sign of a cult hero is they have a nickname.
The Penalty Killer.
And he had a fucking great nickname.
A keeper called the Penalty Killer.
Yeah.
I was a bit disappointed with him going to Spurs afterwards and sitting on their bench. Now, clearly Lloris is a better keeper. There's no arguing.
Yeah. Yeah, it seemed, I always thought that seemed, I guess part of you has to think, do you believe in yourself to go, actually, do you know what, I can try and overtake Luis. But it never happened. And, I really liked Michel Vorm. I've gone with someone who played for Crystal Palace. I've gone with Speroni. Julian Speroni.
For a guy who at points has been pony, the Palace fans love him, don't they?
They really do. Yeah, I think was at Palace for like 15 years. I think he left them in 2019 when he retired. I don't know what he's doing. I don't know if he's doing anything now, but for a while, he also had a restaurant in Crystal Palace. Can you guess what the restaurant was called?
Speroni's.
It was called Speroni's. It closed in like 2016, but
couldn't save it.
But no, I really like him. Actually, the longer his career went, actually, the better he got. Because when he first joined, he was a little
the mad lad in the jogging bottoms.
Yeah, but by the end of his career, really became a solid goalkeeper. And actually, one of the things that Crystal Palace do really well now is goalkeepers. Like Guaita has been brilliant since he joined. And apparently also, it was called one of the nicest guys in football.
I think that there's another Palace keeper that we need to talk about within this as well, which is Gabor Kiraly.
I never felt he was a cult hero at Palace. I think he was he was just a weird guy, wasn't he, because of his grey trousers.
Yes.
But I think if you could ask a Palace fan who they prefer,
Speroni every day.
I think the fifth, like, because of his 15 years there. I mean, he was only at Gabor Kiraly was only at Palace for 3 years, and was replaced by Speroni. I should also I was going to mention Neville Southall.
For me, when you look at the Premier League, Neville Southall.
Well, I think the Premier League is actually where he becomes a cult hero, because before the Premier League, like in the late 80s,
he was one of the best keepers.
You could argue they would argue he was the best goalkeeper in the world.
Yeah,
and whatever else. Whereas by the end, he's becoming, Neville Southall, the personality, and actually, like, since then, he's now on Twitter and gives his account to charitable and sort of awareness pieces, and also there were some other players, and I wanted to keep them down. I wanted to try and keep it to as many teams as possible in there, so I didn't include Neville Southall. But Michel Vorm and Julian Speroni are, I would say, two cult goalkeepers. So who have you got in your back line?
Right back, Moritz Volz at Fulham.
Nice, good. I almost considered him for my best Premier League right backs, because for a couple of years he was brilliant, really fun to watch. I think they called him 10,000 volts, didn't they?
He scored the 15,000th Premier League goal, and obviously the copywriters at the newspapers shit themselves in glee. When he scored the 15,000th goal.
I think it's mainly as well because I had really struggled at right back for that position.
There was a part of me that felt like putting in Trent Alexander-Arnold.
Well, you could argue as a local lad, but it was my thing about cult heroes is they're generally not the world's best player, and you could argue quite legitimately that at the moment Trent Alexander-Arnold is one of the world's best right backs. I I just don't think that makes him a cult hero. I think he is just a brilliant player. If he stays his whole career at Liverpool, maybe, but then you wouldn't. I don't think I'd include Steven Gerrard in it, and he did the same. So I think Volts is much more cult.
For a man to have nicknames at the club, so 220 volts, the electrician, Mr. Resistor, the light bulb,
of course,
and because of his adulation of David Hasselhoff, the Hoff,
yes,
which he had on his boots at one point.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, no, I think there has to be. I think to be a cult hero, there is that. There's the character involved, and I think Moritz Volts really was an absolute character for a short while. So my back three includes basically it's a right back and a left back in a back three with a centre midfield. But my sort of right-sided defender is Tony Hibbert.
Okay. That definitely cult hero at Everton.
Mr. Everton. I don't like
the punchline of many a joke at Everton, but to play for as long as you did, and obviously David Moyes' Everton was an inconsistent animal, but a successful animal at times, and he was a constant of there.
Yeah, 1998 to 2016, he was there, 265 appearances. The last few years, of course, he was overtaken by Seamus Coleman. But once again, a local lad, born in Liverpool, Everton supporter. I think, you can just see that, he is Mr. Everton, and I think basically when I came on to this team, there was 3 players that were the first names on my team sheet. Tony Hibbert was in that front three. I just looked him up, and he's playing with an amateur team, ES Lousy. But yeah, not the best right back in the game. For a while, Everton wasn't the best ever right back at Everton. So there's no England caps here, but yeah, I think there's just that connection with the crowd as in that 25 years he was at Everton, it was just he was as close as you can have to a fan appearing for the team, which I think is quite an important part. So who you got in central defence?
Well, I have an Everton player there and a West Ham player, mainly for West Ham, Slaven Bilic.
Yeah, he seemed to create cult fandom, especially at West Ham. I think helps that he's not odd, but he once again another player full of character, isn't he? Like he's in a heavy metal band, and as well as being a good player, he was part of that 98 Croatia team who ended up in 3rd place.
Yes.
We first probably saw him at U96, where, once again part of that sort of swashbuckling Croatia team. Was only at West Ham a year, came back as manager, but yeah, moved to Everton. It's, I guess, part of the fandom is he could have joined Everton actually earlier, because he agreed a deal in March between the two clubs, and he said no, I owe a debt to West Ham, so finish the season. Save them. They didn't get relegated; they finished just above it, and then moved on. After that, Everton is more injuries, and
you have to be careful with West Ham, because technically, if you look up West Ham cult heroes, nearly all of their players are a former cult hero. But in like the The late 90s Premier League is my heyday when I was like, I knew the stats of every player. I could tell you where they were born. And ridiculous. And if I consumed all content of Premier League, I loved him as a player.
Yeah, very classy.
And
very class player.
The West Ham and Everton fans loved him as much.
Yep. So in my centre defence, I got Ledley King.
He's my next centre defender.
I wondered if that was the case. A Tottenham legend, despite the fact that there's a connection here to Paul Maguire in our last episode. He had knees of asbestos.
Yeah. A guy who didn't train.
Yeah, he couldn't. At the time when Tottenham started playing 2 games in a week, because of course by the end of his Tottenham stay, they were a brilliant team. He could only play 1 game a week because that's all his knees would allow him. As well,
but even with bad knees, he was still playing for England. He was still getting into the England team with no knees.
Like back when there was lots of round pegs and square holes in defensive mid. He was the one that we went into Euro
2004
with. He
started the opening game.
Yeah, and was great player. And
also, they needed somebody to step up when Sol Campbell had did what he did, and that guy stepped up.
So, 268 games he played for Tottenham. How many goals?
10.
Exactly 10. How many yellow cards?
I'm going to say the number's lower than you'd initially think on instinct.
Yeah.
0.
8.
Wow.
8 yellow cards. Because he was class. He could read the game. He was quick, despite what we're saying about his physicality, he was still quick. But yeah, brilliant player. And actually, it's a shame for him that he had injuries, and as well as a time when we had Ferdinand, Terry, sort of
Carragher, Campbell,
all these players in front of him.
Woodgate.
Yeah. And actually, I could argue that he was better than possibly all of them, but peak Rio Ferdinand.
That's harsh.
It's harsh, but I don't know.
That's wrong.
I don't know. I don't know. I just don't know.
We've constantly praised the Chelsea
Campbell,
team who won the league twice. John Terry was a fucking rock.
He was. But
who became the England captain?
Well, that doesn't mean anything.
Oh, but if you're picking one of the first names on the team sheet, it's always going to be the captain, right?
Oh, I know, but I'm just like...
I agree with you. Ledley King was a class player.
Player.
Definitely a Spurs cult hero, but at the same time, he was good. He was good enough to be in contention for the squad, but I don't think we realised with that golden generation just the dearth of quality we had at centre-back.
Well, yeah, exactly. But yeah, and
even with that dearth, Southgate going.
With that dearth of quality, we won nothing. So, left-back.
Left-back, I have George Elokobi for Wolves.
Oh, I never thought of him. But actually, yeah, absolute cult hero, isn't he?
He went up, down with them, went to League One and the Premier League with them. Just a absolute monster of a human being, just in size.
Yeah,
and yeah.
I forgot about George Elokobi, but yeah, as well. I mean, you sort of knew about him originally because he was just buff,
gigantic, hench.
Yeah, that's a great shout. Went up, went down.
And who you've got by looking across at your pad, I couldn't have. I purposely made a point of no more West Ham. No.
Yeah. I've gone with Julian Dix.
Which I completely understand. The fans loved him.
Yeah.
If you go into YouTube and look at the penalty he scored against Schmeichel where he nearly ripped the net off.
Yeah. Hugely powerful left foot. Once again, we're on about nicknames. His nickname was the Terminator. Tough tackling. As well with his shaved head, he looked like a proper West Ham defender to like for what what I thought was back in the days of like when early Premier League, he just looked like an absolute nutcase, and I loved him. Not a Londoner. He grew up in. I think he was born in Bristol. Started his career in the Midlands. But
if you were to go to England, like, who is Mr. West Ham?
Yeah. Complete opposite of Ledley King here. Like, he has quite a few yellow and red cards. Went to Liverpool, but it never really happened for him. But also, as well, he was playing at a not very good Liverpool team, sadly. But yeah, returned to West Ham and absolutely cemented his legend as a proper West Ham. He's a legend and an absolute cult hero. So, who have you got in midfield?
I'm going to start with centre midfield. The first one I have is Two-Guy for Blackburn.
I was going to have Two-Guy.
Because he was just all action, just played his heart out, could score a thunder bastard.
Like, I think because he was sort of a combative midfielder, like, his levels of skill were incredible. And he could absolutely hit an absolute thunder bastard of a goal. He was originally at Rangers, wasn't he?
Yes.
But the Blackburn fans absolutely adore him, and played nearly 300 games for Blackburn.
There's the quote on him, which in 2006, Ferguson came out and said if he were 10 years younger, he'd make him an ideal player for the Old Trafford. Two-Guy's manager, Mark Hughes, came out and said if he too wished Two-Guy was 10 years younger, he said no, because if he was 10 years younger, he'd be in a Barcelona shirt.
Yes. There's actually a connection here because Julian Dix was signed by Graham Souness, and so was Two-Guy. Like, I think Graham Souness would take a chance on a player, and brought Two-Guy to Blackburn, and they, he struggled. He struggled at Rangers because Dick Advocaat was there, and actually, it's a good Rangers team.
He was,
basically, I think as well as being a good Rangers team, they were also a fraught dressing room. I think he struggled to settle, but not a great goal scorer, but a scorer of great goals.
That's right. Yeah.
Had an absolute wonderful touch. Just I think as well, like when he left, when he finally sort of finished at Blackburn, I think everyone dressed in the red of Turkey, like rather than the white and blue of Blackburn, just to show that how much they loved him. I can't deny. So at the base of my midfield, I've gone with Ivan Campo.
To get a Champions League, I've got a Bolton player.
Yep, there's a couple of Bolton players I could have chose, but I went with Campo.
Because this was the time when Allardyce was just like, Bolton have signed. How have Bolton signed that player?
Well, he was smart. He found players who were out of favour. Sort of maybe. I think the issue with Campo was he was struggling confidence and physically.
And he wasn't a Galactico.
No. So I think when he joined, they played him in defence, and it didn't work because physically he just wasn't up to it anymore. so they put him shielding their defence, and just absolutely turned him around.
Just this perm in midfield.
I think as well that helps the cult because, you
could always spot him on the pitch.
You could like a cult. That's it. Two guy as well, like similar. You could spot him because of his, this mop of grey hair. Julian Dix because of his no hair, effectively. These, wasn't at Bolton for very long. 5 years, 6 years or something. But, just was at Bolton at a point where they were at their peak, effectively, in the Premier League years, sort of getting into Europe. He fitted them to a T because they had players of great skill, but they complemented them with players who were combative and basically were going to get yellow and red cards, which Campo did.
He summed up Allardyce's Bolton. The fact that he went on loan to Bolton and ended up, the Real fans expected him back, and he ended up, I prefer living in Bolton.
Yeah. Like when he left, he wrote a letter to the Bolton fans saying, apologies that it didn't end how I'd like it to. Basically, Gary Megson joined and turned the team around by getting them, relegated. But fucking Gary Megson. But like if you have to write a letter to the fans when you leave, I think that's generally a sign of a connection. And I think Ivan Campo is a cult player, however you define it. Absolutely. So, who else have you got in midfield? So, who have you got playing alongside two guy?
Tim Cahill.
Yeah.
That's my true Evertonian. Tim Cahill, this may come across slightly controversial. He was too good for that Everton team.
See, I don't think he was. I think he was just perfectly right for that Everton team. He wasn't...
For a 5'10" guy to have such great heading ability,
yeah,
he had just energy.
That's it. But he was in the perfect team. His heading ability was unsurpassed, quite frankly, especially for a short player. But there's no point in him going to like Arsenal or Man United where they're not going to put in crosses, or Chelsea. So yeah, he was at the perfect team. Was there for quite a while. I think he as a Australian player, I think the Aussie fans obviously love him to bits. As well, I think the celebration, the boxing and the corner flag. I mean, I fucking hate it, but it helped. You become known for it. Just a great player. And yeah, scored 56 goals from 226 games for Everton. That's fucking great. Came from Millwall, I think it helps to be a cult player if it's the sort of Cinderella story. And, Cahill played for Everton in a time when they
got fourth. They got Champions League.
Yep. So yeah. I can't argue with Tim Cahill at all. I think that's a great shout. I was going to count him, but at the time I still had Southall, Hibbert.
Basically, you were creating the Everton graft 11.
Yeah, and I think there is an argument that teams like Everton create that cult fandom, but I've tried to keep it down. But then I have got in front of Ivan Campo, I have got another West Ham player, so my second of the game, which is Mark Noble.
Can't be argued. That's just consistency. And again, if you were asking me to pick Mr. West Ham,
yeah, Mr. West, completely.
I know I've said that earlier for Julian Dix, but Mark Noble was. He stayed through them through thick and thin. When they went down,
yeah,
he could have left easily.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, he could have. His only time away from West Ham is on loan at Hull and Ipswich. As a kid, clearly could have joined at any, seemingly bigger teams at any point. But now, like, from Canning Town, there were, never really got England recognition. Some under 21 caps, but never really got that England core. There's a mural of him at the London Stadium saying Mr. West Ham. Of course, he retired at the end of the season. But yeah, 414 Premier League appearances for West Ham. If 550 if you include the years they went down, their new academy pitch is called the Mark Noble Arena.
That's somebody who will live on in that club.
The Young Player of the Year is the Mark Noble Award. That's the sort of things that you can tell the player has a connection. And alongside Mark Noble, I've gone with David Batty.
Him at Leeds. And I think he left Leeds to go to Blackburn, then Newcastle. The Blackburn team of the early 90s, I think in some ways, because it exploded upon Shearer leaving.
Yeah.
Maybe he's overlooked, but that was a hell of a team and had good English talent throughout it.
Yeah.
And David Batty, all right, fighting Graham Lasso in the Champions League, but Batty came back to Leeds, and that Leeds team of the late 90s, early 2000s, he brought the bite to that. And I love, there's that clip that was going around recently, and it probably trends every 2 or 3 months of Cristiano Ronaldo trying to go past him and just knocking him over.
Yeah.
There's also, is it him versus Napoli?
Sampdoria. I think we played
him against Mancini.
We played Cagliari in a pre-season friendly, and everyone was pointing out it's the first time we've played Italian team in a pre-season friendly since the Batty Mancini battle, because basically he just goes around making a menace of himself because it's pre-season. He's like, I can do what the fuck I want, and like you can tell he's having an absolute laugh, and Mancini's right in his face, and he turns around and winks to Gary McAllister. Yeah, like apparently in that game, the referee goes, because it's a pre-season friendly, the ref doesn't want to send anyone off, so the ref goes up to Wilco and goes, "You got to take off number 4. He's an absolute menace." And he's like, Wilco's like, "No, I'm not doing it." But yeah,
there's that
absolute connection with the fans.
There's that footage recently of Joachim Andersen and Darwin Núñez. Just, you could see Batty's only focus in that match was to annoy the fuck out of Mancini.
Yeah. He joined Blackburn for £2.7 million, and
which is a lot of money at the time he joined.
We used that money to buy Carlton Palmer.
England international Carlton Palmer.
I know, but just never worked at Leeds. But cried when they accepted the bid for him. Didn't want to leave. Came back, and once again, a Leeds lad. Still lives in the area, but like when they asked him to attend the 100-year gala, like he lives in Leeds, I think, like just down the road. And they're like, "Oh, we're doing a 100-year gala." He was like, "Do you want to come?" He was like, "Nah." And I think the mystique of Batty, because basically, he's just sort of disappeared. There's no. He's not turned up as a coach. He was in The Match. Some professionals play some celebrities, but like as a Leeds fan, during COVID, on Thursday Leeds would have this, a load of ex-players and celebrity fans applauding the NHS, and one day Batty turned up on that, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, I've not seen him for years." Just an absolute wonderful player. So, who have you got on your wings or whatever?
On the right mid, I've a bit of a thumb in. Adelta Rapt at QPR.
Good fun player. Just absolutely brilliant in patches for them. No one else.
I felt like he's been all right at Benfica.
He's still there, isn't he?
You play over 100 times for Benfica, you must be doing something right. But I felt like he was playing for the fans, not really playing for the team.
Oh, I can imagine he's an absolute menace to play alongside.
So an interview with obviously Neil Warnock retiring has opened him up for the interview circuit. And they were asking him about Trapp, and it was like I had to go at him for tracking back. I was like, "You're not here to do that. Why are you tracking back?"
Yeah. He. Have you seen Neil Warnock's? I think done a poem.
Oh God.
Yeah, no, don't check it out. But yeah, he it only worked for him under Neil Warnock. Like when I think Mark Hughes was in charge, just never, even like Harry Redknapp, I think, just it didn't work for them. But yeah, for a short while, just I think when a player is that much better than the rest of the team, just absolutely adored by the QPR faithful. But yeah, no, it's a shame really because the guy has all the skill in the world, and actually, in the last few years, he's suddenly making over 20 appearances a year for Benfica. So obviously, he's doing something right because it took him a while to get in, but now he's seemingly doing. I mean, how old is he now?
33.
33. Finally building his career.
I banned the defence straight away from giving him the ball in our half. Ban them all. I told Trapp, if you come over the halfway line into a half, I'll sub you.
Well, shall I start with my left midfielder? Because I thumbed him in because I know he hated playing left midfield, but mine's Georgie Kinkladze.
Oh God, yeah.
Once again, he was told by Alan Ball not to track back, which of course meant everyone else in the team hated him. Even though, he was the most skilled player on that team. And could beat players for fun, but they. I mean, there's no point. I guess if you tell him, even if you told him to track back, he wouldn't have done it anyway. I think was absolutely adored by the Man City fans at the time, despite the fact that, by fitting him into their team, meant they were basically relegated twice because of it. They had to create a system where they could use a number 10, which meant that basically the whole rest of the midfield were compromised. It just didn't work. But yeah, because he scored, when he scored, it was a lovely goal, and he could, he could beat players for fun. It was just brilliant, and I mean, if you've not seen his goal against Southampton,
good Lord,
it's brilliant, isn't it? I saw a video of them showing it to Raheem Sterling the other day, and he's just like, obviously, no, I don't think he'd ever seen it before. He's like, who's this? And he's like, oh, it's Georgie Kinkladze. He's a Georgian, and suddenly he's like, ooh, because he beats one player, who then runs around. So in the meantime, whilst he's beating two other players, as he sort of shuffles, he beats them, and suddenly this other player, I think it might be Steve Chettle or something like that, decides, I'm going to slide in and take it off, and he beats him by just drop of a shoulder, and then dummies the goalkeeper twice to then lift it over him. You know, it's just brilliant. You know, you have to have a certain amount of genius to score a goal like that. So yeah, I had to include Georgie Kinkladze because, you know, whilst he was at Man City, despite the fact that they got relegated twice, you know, he was just adored. But it's a shame, really, because his whole career is built on what ifs. Because he went to Ajax after that, didn't fit in because they don't use number 10s. Went to Derby and actually played quite well for Derby.
But that wasn't a good Derby team.
Well, it wasn't a great Derby team. Went to Leeds.
But that was a terrible.
It was a terrible Leeds team, but also he never played for us because he kept turning up late for training and for matches, pre-season matches. So Eddie Gray fired him. So you know, it's just one of those things. But yeah, if there was a 1 to 11 we had for great player in a terrible team, then we'd include him.
Very much so, yeah.
So who's your other wing player?
Wilfried Zaha.
You can even see I've crossed him out because I wanted to include Georgie Kinkladze.
HLTCO.
Yeah. Hopkins likes to curl one.
Hopkins looking to curl one.
Hopkins looking to curl one. As a Twitter account, if you look him up on Twitter, he's very good.
Yeah, great podcast he releases on Patreon as well.
Yes.
Nice guy as well.
Very nice. Him. Yeah.
He was obviously the biggest Crystal Palace fan I know.
Yeah.
Other than Susanna Reid, who
do you know which Susanna Reid?
She doesn't message me back. She may have even prevented me from messaging her again.
Yes.
But yeah, you can see how much the fans love him there, and obviously him coming back, meant everything to them. And
that he stayed.
He's had so many opportunities. Seemingly had so many opportunities to go, and he's always linked somewhere else. But the play goes through him.
Yeah, I guess if he's been back since 2015, if he really, really wanted to, I guess he could push. You've seen other players push for moves away. You know, today we're looking at Anthony going on strike to join the bottom of the table, Man United.
I'm not letting you get away with bottom.
They are bottom of the table, though. They are bottom of the table as we speak.
For now.
But yeah, Wilfried Zaha, absolutely wonderful player. For a while, he used to frustrate the tits off me. We watched him, didn't we, as an England under-21.
England versus Finland under-21s, where I think he frustrated me watching because it was literally just get the ball, step over, give it away. He was man of the match.
Yeah. No, but, you know, all the skill in the world, but yeah, I think he finally aligned that with an end product.
As a result of Man United coaching.
Barely. But yeah, now 360-something appearances for Crystal Palace. Absolutely. And yeah, once again, wonderful player. And the first top plate is the top scorer for goal for Crystal Palace in the Premier League.
There's been some good players like Andy Johnson as well, who's scored goals for fun for Palace.
Yeah. A couple of years could have joined Arsenal. 40 million quid, I think they were looking at him.
Well, there's the rumours of him going to Mourinho's Roma. I wouldn't join a Mourinho team if I were him, though.
I don't know.
It'd be like, why aren't you tracking back? That's not what you're there to do.
I guess he's got Dybala there now. Maybe I like to think he's going through some sort of midlife crisis right now. Tammy Abraham, Wijnaldum, Dybala. Like, there's some really fun players there at Roma.
And I can't wait to watch them park the bus at Catenaccio their way to a 1-0.
But yeah. So on my right midfield, I got Ray Parlour.
Complete. If you were to look up cult hero in the dictionary, he'd be there.
Yeah. Sort of stemmed the George Graham to Wenger period of Arsenal. So,
I think also because he's a wonderful player.
he was a great player. Oh, I think wonderful maybe a bit much, but he was a very good player.
Again, you look at the players that England had at that time. When you think of who did England have on the right at that time, Beckham and McManaman.
Beckham and McManaman, yeah, 10 caps, not enough.
When you think of some of the players who were available and could play in that time, you wouldn't have got into the international squad.
Nah.
But he's won every trophy, hasn't he, in English football?
Well, he's won the Premier League, FA Cup,
League Cup.
So yeah, Charity Shield and all that. So there's nothing. He
Also,
played.
he was very good at Borough when he went there for a season, from memory.
I think he started out all right, and then it all went wrong.
He had issues personally, didn't he?
Personally, and as well with injury. But of course.
Just because
I think as well,
watching him stick it to Tim Lovejoy.
God, yeah, like he's a proper like Romford boy, isn't he? Like he liked to drink. Was a chirpy character. Had a great shot on him as well for when it and yeah, obviously
Great crossing.
Yeah.
But to play in a team that had Henry and Bergkamp and
Perez, Will Todd, he was
still getting games with those players. He was getting games with World Cup winners.
Yeah.
You don't do that if you're a bad player. And obviously you
go 3 Premier League titles, 4 FA Cups, a League Cup and a Cup Winners' Cup.
That'll do.
333 Premier League appearances. But yeah, he was always just seen as less than the players around him. Maybe because the players around him were so great. But yeah, I mean,
they were buying World Cup winners.
Tim Lovejoy will never live down. Oh, it's all right. It's only Ray Parlour. And that's good because I fucking hate Tim Lovejoy. But yeah.
I liked Tim Lovejoy at Soccer IM. I liked Soccer
when
IM.
we were young. And we didn't realise just how bad it all was. So who have you got up front?
My first striker I have is the very venerable Christophe Dugarry.
I thought about Dugarry. I've got him on my list of players that I wanted to include, but I didn't. But
the job I have meant I spent a lot of time around the Birmingham area.
Yes, they love him, don't they?
My God.
Like he's joined on loan.
He played 30 games for them.
Yeah,
but he had no right joining Birmingham City.
He saved them effectively, didn't he, from relegation?
Yes,
the first time. It just was brilliant. Then he joined them on a permanent deal, and then basically left to go chase the money in Qatar. I mean, at this point, he was an older player. But if you look at his CV, Bordeaux, Milan, Barcelona, Marseille, back to Bordeaux. 55 French caps.
World Cup winner, European Championships winner, Confederation Cup winner, played in 2 different World Cups. You don't do that if you're a bad player.
No. Yeah, no. Great, absolutely great player.
And no offence to Birmingham City, and I've had spoken to a few Birmingham City fans from my job having me around the Birmingham area. He had no right to play for them.
No. But yeah, the fact that he kept them up, that's what gives him cult status.
5 goals in 4 games.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just class. And of course, brilliant. I can't deny that. Who you got next to him?
Paulo Wanchop.
Oh, I forgot about Paulo Wanchop. But yeah, for Derby.
Yeah.
Absolute legend.
And they got £3.5 million for him.
Yeah. Is that when he went to
West Ham.
West Ham? Actually, it wasn't bad for West Ham.
It was all right for City.
Yeah.
Him at Derby was something special though, because it was those of an age where, like we've said in other ones, where just random players would seemingly join a club, and watching him, the Man United team that were winning league after league after league, watching him just dance through them,
Yeah.
and embarrass the best goalkeeper in world football.
I mean,
And he seemed to do it regularly when he played us.
well, his goal against Man United was voted the greatest goal in Derby's history. And as well, you look at Derby now, and they're an absolute basket case of a club. You know,
Mel Morris has a lot to answer.
Mel Morris does have a lot to answer for, but they've been sort of mismanaged for quite a while.
Yeah.
With one chop up front, they finished 8th and 9th. Like that, you don't get that anymore.
No.
So yeah, he's sort of.
They weren't playing with great strikers either, like Dion Burton and Malcolm Christie.
Yeah, no, not at all. No, so I've got a huge love for Paulo One-Chop, and as well, like him turning up at the 2006 World Cup. Like I remember there was, I can't remember who the goalkeeper was, but I ended up with Paulo One-Chop basically running from the halfway line 1-on-1 with the goalkeeper, and you're like, oh no, then you realise it's One-Chop. You're like, oh, do you know what? It's fine. I totally believe he's going to score, and I think it finished 4-2 to Germany as like the first goal. But yeah, absolutely brilliant player, and yeah, just good fun.
Actually, do you know, I looked up the Derby County team of that time.
Aranio?
Baiano?
I think they had Baiano and Aranio, who I think were they European Cup winners?
Yes.
They're good. There was they had a good, I can't remember who the defender was.
Igor Stimac,
good player.
Do you know, I'm going to take back. He played with some dross players. He played with some good players.
There was some very good players. He was being assisted by some good players. I think up front, it was still pretty slim pickings, like Dean Sturridge.
Baiano and One-Chop and Baiano.
I thought Baiano was a midfielder. But yeah, there you go. But yeah, no, good. It was a sort of the heyday for Derby as much as it is. So, do you want to know who I've got up front?
Please do.
I've gone Southampton based. So
you've picked conspiracy theory nut job.
I have picked a conspiracy theory nut job.
And Matt Letizia.
It's hard to, like, Letizia is doing so much to harm his legacy as a person. But also, my friend went to university in Southampton. They'd often see Letizia in the bars, and apparently he was a miserable bastard back then. Now he's just a miserable bastard who believes that let's not even go into.
I don't want to give it. I don't want our tens of listeners to hear him.
Yeah, if you believe that sort of stuff, then go away. But sort of, I've got him in the hole. First midfielder to score 100 goals, 443 games for Southampton, 160 goals. The guy
had plenty of opportunities to leave as well. They were melted.
Chelsea wanted him for a while.
Man City wanted him.
Could have gone elsewhere. Didn't, but yeah, it was. Up until recently, I think the guy could walk into a pub in Southampton and never pay for a drink again. But up front, I have Marian Pahars.
I understand that.
So the Latvian Michael Owen. Once again, I think these smaller teams. It feels harsh calling them, but they are smaller teams. Lend themselves to cult heroes, and Bahars was at Southampton for 7 years. Once again, just sort of came from nowhere. And he looked, for times, he was a really great player, but also had horrendous injury issues. Scored some important goals for Southampton, and I think as well, it's the connection he had with the fans that meant that I included him in this list.
He was a very special part of the early years of the Premier League because obviously the wonder goal against Newcastle where he flicks it up over himself.
Oh, this is Letizia.
I'm sorry, I'm going back to Letizia because I ended up down a Google hole with Matt Letizia.
Yeah, but yeah, so I moved on to Pahars. But yeah, Letizia was hugely important in the.
I bet you wondered what the hell I was on about with Marion Pahars there for a second.
Well, I'm trying to think of any wonder goals he scored, but
Marion Pahars was. I remember that there was hoopla about him joining the Latvian Michael Owen.
It was hoopla, but I always felt like it was like the Red Tops taking the piss because Latvia's.
I don't know. I took it quite serious. I
always thought they were just taking the piss. But we've got English chef Michael Owen, and this Latvian and I think the Southampton fans
took to him.
Really took to him. But yeah, if Letizia and his goals, I mean,
the goal against Blackburn.
Yeah, I mean,
he made Tim Flowers, who was a very good goalkeeper, look dumb.
Well, the thing I think with Letizia is, as it's proved out, I think he's quite a strong-willed person, and I think in the press that week, I think Tim Flowers had said something that annoyed him, so he was like, "I'm going to make you look silly," and he had the ability to do that. I think he scored like the goal against Newcastle with the basically where he keeps flicking it over the defenders. Brilliant. The goal, the free kick where he flicks up to himself, and he on his day he could do whatever he wanted. He also had injury issues.
But him flicking it over, he always knew he could chip Schmeichel.
Yeah,
which I liked.
Yeah, no,
he was the person who seems he found the flaw that Schmeichel would come off his line.
Yeah. No, he was he could make goalkeepers look incredibly stupid. But yeah, is there any other players you wanted to include in your list but couldn't find space for?
Stefano Aurelio, by what I've just had a look at. Jesus. Well, I think there are some players who played for the bigger clubs who were known for their graft. Like Antonio Valencia at Man United. Technically, you could argue.
He's a cult player.
That's the guy who came in to replace Cristiano Ronaldo.
Yeah, but ended up replacing Gary Neville.
Yeah. There's a few. I mean, like Troy Deeney at Watford.
Yeah.
Jamie Vardy at Leicester.
Yeah.
There's a few who are just kind of synonymous with that club, and if you think of that club now, you think of that player.
Yeah, I had Big Dunk, but I took him out, especially at a time when I had so many Everton players potentially going in.
Well, you were making West Everton United.
Yeah. Vinnie Jones, Wimbledon.
And Leeds.
And never in the Premier League, but is adored in Leeds by fans who remember
Leeds
those.
tattoo.
Yeah. Oh, he loves Leeds. He's still, I remember him appearing for Lucas Radibi's testimonial, who's another player because...
There's an Amazon Prime documentary about the season Leeds won the league. I can't remember the name of it by far. But
Do You Want to Win?
That's the one. Vinnie Jones is in it and talks quite happily about how much he loved Leeds.
Yeah. No, he still goes on about and a lot of the fans who remember him, because obviously it was nearly 30 something years ago, still remember this. I think the fact that he had, it's the connection he had with the fans, and that's what he did. Isabel, he would make a connection with the disabled fans and young fans, and I think that's sort of that sort of thing doesn't go unnoticed. I did write down John Terry, who obviously is, but I think it's not really cult. but actually, like you see, they've still got a banner for him in the crowd, and I think that sort of is. You could argue that's a cult player. And Wes Morgan for Leicester,
Captain Morgan.
I sort of want. But once I'd fit in so many midfielders, I knew I couldn't include another defender.
And also, I wouldn't. You're barred from putting Lucas Radebe. We have very few rules on here on this podcast. One of them, you can't make fun of Brian Roy.
Yep.
And Lucas Radebe, as a new rule, Lucas Radebe is barred from any further teams.
I'm on about Wes Morgan.
I know, but in terms of Wes Morgan was fantastic in terms of that all swashbuckling centre back. You have Lucas Radebe as the all. I can see he's on your list.
Oh, I mentioned him. Yeah, he was.
But you're barred from having Radebe in any other team based on the amount of Radebe love that's been in this podcast
as
in the
well.
Last month.
Tony Adams, Clint Dempsey,
Steve Ogrizovic,
Oggy. I did think about Chris Waddle for Wednesday from his days, but I don't know. I think they liked him, but I don't think he's probably a cult player. But yeah, Clint Dempsey definitely would be because the Fulham fans really loved him. But yeah, that is our cult heroes, 1 to 11.
So one person, Kanu,
yeah.
Good old Nwangwo.
We may revisit this as we think of more because it's actually the thing about football I like most is the cult players, the sort of
the players that Pablo Hernandez at Leeds.
Yes,
Michu at Swansea.
I had Michu originally before Letizia because I was like, I don't want to include Letizia because he's a dickhead. But Michu, for that, I would have included him, but it was just 1 year he was there.
But what a year!
Oh, sorry, just get the dogs again. So my 1 to 11, Speroni in goal.
Yep.
Who have you got?
I have Michel Vorm.
Jaskalainen.
Jaskalainen.
I did think of Jaskalainen. So in defence, Dix, King, Hibbert.
Volts, Bilic, King, Lakobe.
In midfield, Batty, Noble, Campo.
Tarapch, Tagai, Cahill and Zaha. The only other person who I had written down, who I don't think we mentioned, JJ Okocha.
I really wanted to include JJ, but after I got Campo, it was sort of the same Bolton team.
Yeah. Same with Djorkaeff.
Yes, same with Djorkaeff. At least with Dix and Noble and Hibbert and Southall, they're different eras.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Basically, we'd just be picking the Bolton team of 2002.
Exactly. That team was fun. But
Carter.
Yeah. God, it was so bad there. He retired. I'll never forgive Adidas for that. And up front, I got Kinkladze, Letizia, Parla, and Parhas.
So I've got One Job and Dugarry.
Lovely. We'll take it from there. We'll see you soon. But if you've got any cult players you'd like to add, or if you've got your own 11 of cult players that we've stuck to the Premier League because that's our current theme. But if you want to do your 1 to 11 outside the Premier League, you can catch us at on Twitter at the 1 to 11 pod, on Facebook at the 1 to 11 podcast, and on Instagram at the 1 to 11 pod. And our email is in the show notes.
Absolutely. So thank you very much for joining us, and we will see you soon.
Cheers.